In these talks, I'm here to paint a picture of the theosophical way of looking at the world using what's known as the Rosicrucian method. Don't expect a history lesson on Rosicrucianism, though. When I say Rosicrucian method, I mean presenting theosophy in the same way the mystery schools in Europe did since the 13th and 14th centuries, aka Rosicrucian training. You're familiar with the idea that theosophy is an ancient truth shared with humanity way back when, to create a basic well of human knowledge in everyone's hearts. But the deeper we dive into the past, the more hush-hush this wisdom became. Why the secrecy, you ask? Well, I'll get into that later, but for now, know that this universal wisdom was whispered in secret schools to individuals who weren't just learning, but undergoing soul-transforming training, turning them into clairvoyant, higher world-seeing folks. These trained souls were then sent out into the world as guides. Now, why all the secrecy? I'll touch on that later too. But imagine progress as more folks gaining the smarts to grasp this ancient wisdom. So as time marched into the 19th century, external conditions forced the guardians of this knowledge to spill the beans. A lot of occult science spilled out for humanity's sake. The guardians figured that in the olden days, spiritual teachings through religions and such covered people's eternal truth cravings. But as humanity's needs evolved, the guardians had to face the fact that more and more souls wouldn't be content with the traditional ways of receiving spiritual truths. And that's why we're here, unraveling the tale of theosophy in the open. So if you're one of those folks seeking fulfillment in anthroposophy, you're onto something that sprouted from noticing a contemporary human need. The guardians of the secret knowledge saw this coming, but it wasn't until a specific point in time that they rolled up their sleeves to prep for letting this wisdom flow into humanity. They knew that these secrets needed to be understood by the general intelligence of the 19th and 20th centuries. Fast forward to the 13th and 14th centuries, when the first Rosicrucians, rallying around a significant figure named Christian Rosenkreuz, kicked things off. Christian Rosenkreuz was the one who boldly stated, "We've got this treasure trove of super-sensible knowledge and wisdom from the mysteries. Stick to it, and we can keep sending out trained individuals from our schools to teach others once they've mastered the secrets of primeval wisdom." The ancient way of passing down this wisdom was going to stick around, but Christian Rosenkreuz foresaw something else brewing. He expressed, "More people thirsty for primeval wisdom will show up, but we can't just hand it to them like we have it now. They'll demand proof, and the blind trust in authority will dwindle as human judgment sharpens. Trust and belief used to be prerequisites for the old way of sharing wisdom. In our current times, you'd say, folks will come wanting to scrutinize what they're told. They'll insist on applying the same logical intellect used for material world observation. Sure, they admit you need something extra for exploring the spiritual realm, but they won't budge on testing things with that intellect. That's why, at the start of our era, the Rosicrucians had to repackage primeval wisdom in new forms, ones that jive with the contemporary mind and soul. It's all about making it click for the modern crowd. Theosophy, as laid out by the Rosicrucian method, remains consistent across time and space. Whether you're a theosophist in the 19th or 20th century or now, the essence remains unaltered. The wisdom it carries, however, adjusts its form precisely to suit what people in different times desire and need to comprehend. Now, let's zero in on our era. The evolution of humanity took a path where we became increasingly entwined with the tangible, physical aspects of reality. Think about ancient times, like the days of the Egyptian culture. People back then constructed things and met their personal needs with straightforward methods and forces. Contrast that with our contemporary existence, where we've decked ourselves out with all sorts of clever contraptions for physical comfort. It's a stark difference. Why? Because the Western world's specific mission was to mould external culture and gain mastery over nature, putting the physical realm under the sway of the human spirit. And in this world of ours, to soak in the guarded wisdom of the secret schools, you need measures distinct from those used in ancient times. But flip the coin, and when we measure the knowledge and understanding of spiritual realities possessed by the Chaldeans against what we know now, the Chaldeans tower over us like giants. Sure, we appreciate Copernicus, Galileo, and the tidbits external science tosses our way today, but that's like child's play compared to the wisdom the ancient Chaldeans held. For a modern researcher, Mars is a planet with a trackable course. But the Chaldeans, they knew the forces and entities tied to Mars, the divine will calling the shots, and the intricate link between these forces and us humans. The Chaldeans had the inside scoop on the mystery and influence wielded by these spiritual forces. That's why, when it comes to digging into the inner essence of ancient Chaldean culture, the modern researcher is left scratching their head. External tools are at their disposal, but the inner means have vanished. Enter Theosophists and Rosicrucians, they've got the spiritual, esoteric keys to unlock the spirit of that ancient culture. When it comes to those esteemed scientific authorities delving into the remnants of ancient Babylonian wisdom, they might as well be toddlers confronted with a complex electrical gadget. What's excavated from these ancient sites leaves the researchers in a bit of a pickle. The spiritual knowledge of that era was so profound and boundless that they're left scratching their heads. However, our modern scientific marvels, the ones we proudly admire today as proof of recent centuries' progress, were born from the intellect and external contraptions of our civilization. This kind of achievement became possible for modern science. But hold your horses, because understanding the spiritual realm in such an era demands a different flavour of thinking and perception. Here's a little heads up. Amidst all the chatter about higher or lower degrees of evolution, debating the greatness of Buddha versus Christ, it's not the be-all and end-all. Whether Assyrian wisdom trumps our own isn't the critical question. We're smack in the middle of a materialistic age, and what we need is a healthy dose of spiritual knowledge flowing into our culture to satisfy humanity's longing for it. Enter the Rosicrucian wisdom, dishing out this knowledge to modern folks in a form that suits them. Now, what I'm about to say might raise an eyebrow or two, but stick with me. Rosicrucian wisdom has been more misunderstood than just about anything in the world. As time rolled on, Christian Rosenkreutz, the big shot behind it all, foresaw the demands of understanding that rationalistic thought would toss their way. He knew that it was high time to broadcast all spiritual knowledge in a form demanded by the modern age. Picture this. The Rosicrucians had it tougher than any similar movement in earlier periods. Why? Well, their game started in the 13th and 14th centuries, right when materialism was barging in. All those modern marvels like steam engines and telegraphy were strapping folks firmly to the physical plane. The Rosicrucians had to brace for an era when people's thinking would be shaped by mathematical principles. But alas, they were entirely misunderstood. Don't go looking for the real deal about Rosicrucianism in public discourse. It's not there. The profound spiritual truths nurtured by the Rosicrucians got a rather skewed makeover, suggesting that spiritual phenomena could be whipped up in alchemists' cellars with retorts and such. This twisted idea birthed the materialistic caricature of Rosicrucianism that's paraded around in literature today. Their mission? To craft a science that would gracefully let their wisdom seep into the world. So let's wrap our heads around the fact that when we serve up theosophy to the people of today, it's got to have that Rosicrucian flavour. Sure, we could toss in some older lingo and maybe snag a few folks, but those would likely be individuals thoroughly enmeshed with the beat of the modern world and its culture. There are those egoists who prefer to tap out from the challenges of our current age, but our game plan is different. We're all about taking modern life and its expressive forms seriously, embracing our era for what it is, while striving to weave in some spiritual influence. That's the mission Rosicrucian theosophy embraces. Now let's talk about the tangible impact theosophy can have, like in the field of medicine. Imagine if medicine keeps riding the materialistic wave. If you peaked 40 years ahead, you'd probably shudder at the brutality of the procedures and death-defying acts medical science might unleash on humanity. Today's medical science pokes around the effects of remedies using the human material it finds in hospitals and such, basically, through outer observation. But hold on to your hats, because Rosicrucianism, with its knack for spiritual wisdom, is gearing up to revamp the whole medical science scene. And that's just one slice of the pie. Now look at the tangled mess of our existence today, especially when you pit it against the ancient Chaldeans. Think about the intellectual energy and intricate coordination needed to cash a check issued in New York over in Tokyo. Our current era, spreading culture like butter across the globe, demands a different breed of spiritual activity compared to the good old days. Occultists know the drill. Modern thinking is struggling to keep up with the wild chaos of outer conditions and tasks swallowing up humanity. Thinking itself is heading towards a stiff, inflexible state. Yep, we're in an age of transition, and soon enough, thinking won't be nimble enough to tango with and reshape the complex conditions of life. It's a wild ride, folks. Why do we spread the word about theosophy? It's all about achieving tangible results. Theosophical thoughts have this magical effect of making thinking more pliable, more adaptable, allowing for a swift overview of extensive circumstances. Enter Rosicrucianism. It's here to infuse life with its wisdom in every nook and cranny. The practical impact of theosophy is on full display in my essay, The Education of the Child in the Light of Anthroposophy. Trying to grasp its essence without a dose of Rosicrucian theosophy would be like trying to ride a bike without wheels. Not happening. Rosicrucian theosophy isn't meant to be just a theory. It's your go-to guide in the practical trenches of daily life. This practical element is a bit of a no-show in the older theosophical formats. The role of Rosicrucian theosophy or occultism is to quench the spiritual thirst of people and let the spirit mingle seamlessly with their everyday duties. It's not meant for fancy salons or solitary hermits. It's here for the entire symphony of human culture. Now, let's talk about wisdom. It's a timeless entity, always in its own league. But just as individuals go through various stages of life and evolution, so does humanity as a whole. Hence, the forms in which wisdom is unveiled to humanity need to keep pace with its evolving journey. The great teachers of humanity are still in the mix, working their magic among us. Even we, present here as souls, have been through the ringer of past incarnations, the Greco-Latin, the Egypto-Chaldean, and even epochs further back in time. All of this to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of achievements and knowledge. Picture a soul in an ancient Egyptian incarnation, surrounded by the colossal pyramids and enigmatic sphinxes. The effect is worlds apart from what surrounds us today. As long as the earth keeps evolving, and it's always on the move, the soul undergoes a continuous cycle of new experiences. The soul doesn't pop back onto the earthly scene to impress the gods. It's here to learn. Earth's face was quite different during the soul's first incarnation, and it'll morph again when the final incarnation comes around. We return to this earthly realm only when there's something fresh to be learned. That's why the downtime between two incarnations is a lengthy affair. Just ponder how Northern Europe, as a mere landscape, looked vastly different when Christ was around. We don't hit the earthly stage twice without snagging a chance to learn something new. Everything in this world is part of an ongoing evolution. It's the constant crafting and unveiling of the new. Evolution isn't just a human affair, it extends to all beings. We need to seek out beings who've reached stages of evolution beyond what humans have attained, even though in this life we cross paths with them in various ways. These beings, like us, are bound by the law of evolution. Just as our souls had a different vibe thousands of years ago, the beings that reveal themselves now were also rocking a different tune in earlier epochs. They, too, are perpetual learners. Now, when we talk about one of these higher beings, making the descent to our world to unveil the mysteries of the higher realms with the tools of the spirit, we're talking about a sublime art, an art even a god has to master. Today's humans need a different approach than those living 10,000 years ago. The higher beings, just like us, evolve, and my spiel during this congress about the Damascus event is a sneak peek into how they roll. A person with spiritual vision doesn't just see the outer environment, they also tune into everything that makes up the spiritual aura of the earth. Just like humans have their own aura, so do cosmic bodies. A clairvoyant eventually gets the knack of perceiving the aura of a cosmic body. Now, what a clairvoyant would have glimpsed in the Earth's aura 2,000 years ago would be a whole different ballgame compared to 1,000 years ago. Fast forward to today, and the clairvoyant would see yet another transformation. Just like the visual spectacle of the outer world changes, so does the picture of the spiritual world that the visionary gazes into. It's like having a front row seat to the evolving drama of existence. Now, let's rewind to an event that's worth a second mention, the burning thorn bush and the grand proclamation from Sinai. So what went down with Moses at that time? Well, his clairvoyant mojo had hit a certain level, and he saw beyond the surface of the physical phenomenon. If you weren't clairvoyant, you'd probably just see a natural event. Moses, on the other hand, looked into that burning thorn bush and saw a being proclaiming itself as "I am the I am." To him, it wasn't just an external fire, there was a spiritual reality hanging out in that flame. Moses got a front row seat to a being intricately connected to humanity's further evolution, proudly declaring, "I am the I am." So what did Moses' pupils learn in the mystery schools? They got the scoop that the same being who dropped some truth bombs on Sinai would at some point descend to earth, take up residence in a human body, and chat it up for 3 years in the form of a man named Christ Jesus. This was the inside scoop for the initiates. Saul, who later morphed into Paul, had a bit of a different take. He knew this being was legit and would touch down on earth. However, he couldn't wrap his head around the idea that the same being who showed up in the burning thorn bush as Jehovah could endure the whole cross ordeal. What changed his mind? The Damascus event. When he caught a glimpse of the living Christ in the earth's aura during his clairvoyant escapade, he knew it was the same being who had experienced the whole cross saga. But hang on a sec, this vision wouldn't have been on the menu in the past. More than 2,000 years ago, Christ wasn't chilling in the earth's aura. He was still rocking the sun vibes. Zarathustra, way back when, gazed upon the sun wrapped in an aura he named Ahura Mazda, the grand aura of Ormuzd. However, this being made the descent, first showing up to Moses in the fiery thorn bush, and then making a terrestrial cameo in the body of Jesus of Nazareth. That's why Christ could boldly claim, "I am the light of the world." Before this grand entrance, no one could have uttered those words because the light of the world hadn't hung out in any being before. It's a wild ride through the twists and turns of spiritual evolution. Diving into these themes is a journey, and we'll keep at it until the understanding is rock solid. For now, let's hint at the fact that the Christ being couldn't have always pulled off the same grand reveals, like the one Paul got to experience. The Christ being had to first gather the necessary mojo, develop it to a point where these revelations were doable. This kind of unveiling couldn't have happened earlier than 2,000 years ago. Every soul in each incarnation is on the move, making strides. This isn't just true for us, it holds for the big shots too. Wrap your head around the idea that Christ hasn't been a static figure. His distinctive modes of operation show us how he, too, moves from one evolutionary stage to the next. It's like hitting you with a wave of exhilaration when you realise that just as your own soul is on a journey of incarnations and progress, so are these spiritual beings, reaching higher and higher stages, becoming more and more potent. This realisation is the heartbeat of evolution, a crucial element in Rosicrucian esotericism. It's all about unveiling how a being as majestic as Christ has been at work in the past, and still struts his stuff in the likes of Moses and Paul. From this, you start to grasp how even a being of such celestial grandeur keeps levelling up. It's like having a front row seat to the intimate dance of evolution. Think about a child. The little one comes into the world, catches a glimpse of the light, the usual deal. In those initial years, change happens at warp speed. It's like evolution on steroids during this phase compared to the later chapters of life. Even the materialistic science crowd could hop on board with this one. If you peek at the brain, doable with some external wizardry, you'll notice that on top of a child's head, in that squishy spot that sticks around for a while, the skull bones don't close up right away. The brain itself takes its sweet time getting into shape. The brain's gig is to craft an instrument for a power the child won't wield until later, the power to think, to weave together perceptions. Now, if you're clairvoyant, you get to witness a grand spectacle during the first few weeks and months after birth. The child is like a magnet, surrounded by dynamic, kick-butt forces from the etheric body, that second slice of the human constitution. In grown-ups today, the etheric body's size practically matches that of the physical body. But in a tot, it stretches way beyond, especially around the noggin. Picture a clairvoyant watching a play of light, forces kicking up from the body below and streaming from the nape of the neck, where hair makes its grand entrance. These forces dance in a living light show, forming an astral etheric glow in the child's etheric body, a glow that gradually fades away over time. Within this glow lurk the forces behind the creation of connective tissues in the brain. The brain, post-birth, gets shaped out of spiritual stuff. Picture 40 to 50 streams of forces working together. That's the light show. The body of light is crafted from these streams. A magical spectacle unfolds as this body of light gradually presses into the child's brain. Initially, The etheric body hung out on the outside, wrapped around the head, keeping things primitive. It was enveloped by a body of light, supplying forces that the etheric body slurped up. Then it oozes its way into the child's head, becoming the intricate etheric organism that hangs out there. It's like a cosmic ballet of evolution happening right in the child's cranium. The beauty of the evolutionary process lies in the fact that everything physical springs forth from the spiritual, shaped and formed by the spiritual forces, only to be received back into ourselves. It's like the psyche crafting its own cozy abode and then moving in. This microcosmic dance, think a child's brain, mirrors the grand ballet in the macrocosm, the vast world. Now ponder an exceptionally evolved figure, someone like Jesus of Nazareth, where Christ took up residence as a soul for a solid 3 years. Just as a child's etheric body gets the physical brain ready before moving in, Christ, too, had prepped the dwelling where he planned to hang out. This wasn't a casual affair. He rolled up his sleeves and got involved. Initially, he was on the periphery of Earth, a place not quite ready to host him. However, some top-notch souls had been working hard on Earth, creating an environment that drew Christ closer. He pitched in too, and eventually he transformed the body of Jesus of Nazareth to a state where it could house the Christ within. Christ did the heavy lifting, initially working externally on the body, and then smoothly transitioning to take residence inside. What goes on in the microcosm echoes in the macrocosm, and it's the continuous development of beings above us that makes evolution a thing. Christ didn't become the planetary spirit of the earth just because it was his ability to reveal himself beyond the material realm that made it happen. Microcosmic events always align with the macrocosmic, creating a harmonious dance. Today, I didn't exactly unpack the first chapter of Rosicrucianism for you. Instead, I nudged you in the direction of how a contemporary individual should navigate thinking and perceiving. The essence of the mandate, know thyself, isn't about a solitary exploration within. No, that would be selfish. Our sense of self isn't confined to us alone. It's a creation born from the vast universe. Our journey towards self-knowledge eventually leads us to merge with the entire cosmos. Understanding ourselves is about finding our place in the grand world, unveiling the genuine significance of self-knowledge right there in the cosmic tapestry. And that's a wrap for today's learning journey. Thank you so much for joining us and experiencing all the excitement. If you had as much fun as we did, don't forget to give that like button a big thumbs up and subscribe.